Let me ask you a simple but profound question. How do you respond when someone hurts you? How do you react when life throws you a curveball or when people act in ways that challenge your peace of mind? The truth is, we all face moments of hurt. It's an inevitable part of the human experience. Whether it's a cruel word, a betrayal of trust, or a misunderstood action, there are moments in life that will cut us deep. But what separates those who rise above adversity from those who remain stuck in the pain is how we choose to respond. You see, it's not the hurt itself that shapes our lives, it's the reaction we give to that hurt. We cannot control the actions of others, but we have absolute control over how we choose to respond. And this, my friends, is where our true power lies. We are emotional beings, but we are not slaves to our emotions. Emotions are like signals. They tell us something about what's happening in our hearts and minds, but they do not command us. When we are hurt, the first instinct might be to lash out, to retaliate, to defend ourselves. But that is often the very thing that leads to more pain, more misunderstanding, and more damage. When you react out of anger, frustration, or pain, you are giving away your power. You are allowing your circumstances to control your actions. And in the heat of the moment, you may say things you regret, make decisions you wouldn't otherwise make, and create wounds that are far deeper than the original hurt. In those moments, the best thing you can do is pause. Pause before you react. In that pause, you have an opportunity. You have the chance to reflect, to understand why this situation is affecting you, and to decide how you want to move forward. You see, reacting is a reflex, responding is a choice. A response comes from a place of clarity, wisdom, and strength. It allows you to step back and gain perspective. When you choose to respond rather than react, you create space for personal growth. Think about it. Every time we are hurt and we choose to rise above it, every time we choose to not react in anger, become stronger, more mature, and more in control of ourselves. Our peace is no longer dependent on the actions of others. And sometimes the best response is no response at all. Silence in the face of provocation is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of inner strength. You don't need to engage in every battle that comes your way. Some people may try to provoke you, but you can choose to remain calm, composed, and focused on your own peace. This doesn't mean you're avoiding the issue. It means you are securing your own emotional well-being, no matter what others do. Let me be clear, this doesn't mean that you don't stand up for yourself or that you allow people to walk over you. But it does mean that you don't let hurt rule your actions. You choose to act with wisdom, to think through your words and decisions carefully, and to protect your peace. Because when you react in haste, you may lose more than just a moment. You may lose your sense of self, your reputation, and the potential for healing. Forgiveness, too, plays a critical role here. Forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean that what was done to you is okay. But forgiveness is a gift to yourself. It's the act of letting go, of not holding on to the weight of past offenses. When we forgive, we free ourselves from the chains of bitterness and anger. And let me say, this growth comes from the trials, not from the triumphs. The challenges we face, the hurts, the disappointments, the misunderstandings are the very tools that shape us into better versions of ourselves. So instead of reacting with bitterness, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I grow from this experience? Living above the hurt is about embracing your higher calling. It's about knowing that your purpose is greater than any temporary pain. When you live with a strong sense of who you are and what you stand for, the slings and arrows of life will not knock you off course. You will not be defined by the hurts you face, but by the strength with which you rise above them. So the next time you find yourself hurt, remember, you don't have to react. You can choose to respond with grace, wisdom, and strength. You can rise above the pain and become the best version of yourself. We often find ourselves in situations where we feel powerless, as if the actions of others or the circumstances around us are in control. But the truth is, there's one thing we have complete authority over: our own reactions. We may not be able to control what happens to us or how others behave, but we always have the power to choose how we respond. This is where the true power of control lies. In life, there will always be moments of conflict, pain, disappointment, and injustice. These events are often out of our hands. What's said to us, what's done to us, and what we experience in our lives is beyond our direct influence. But the one thing that remains entirely within our grasp is our ability to control how we respond to those situations. Our responses shape the trajectory of our lives far more than the events themselves. This is why self-control, particularly in times of adversity, is such a vital skill. When we realize that our reactions don't have to be impulsive or driven by the moment, we unlock an incredible strength within ourselves. Most people react automatically to the emotions they feel in the heat of the moment: anger, frustration, hurt. But when we take a step back, when we pause and give ourselves space to think, we open the door to a more measured and thoughtful response. It's in this pause that we reclaim our power. Choosing not to react is not a passive act, it's an empowered decision. It means that rather than being swept up in the emotional tide, you are deliberately choosing to stand firm in your own beliefs, values, and sense of self. Reacting out of emotion might feel right in the moment, but it's often driven by fear, insecurity, or an unconscious desire for control. When you choose not to react, you give yourself permission to act with wisdom, clarity, and purpose. This doesn't mean we suppress our feelings or pretend that we aren't hurt. Emotions are real and they need to be acknowledged. But the key is not to let those emotions dictate our actions. Instead, we can process our emotions in a healthy way and then choose a response that is aligned with who we are and who we want to be. This is the power of control, the ability to separate the feeling from the action, the emotion from the decision. By exercising control over how we respond, we stop being victims of circumstances. We no longer allow ourselves to be swept away by the actions of others or the unpredictability of life. We become the ones who direct the course of our own lives, who create our own peace, who build our own sense of security from the inside out. When we can control our reactions, we regain control over our peace of mind, our relationships, and our future. Hurt is a universal experience, something that touches every human being at some point in their lives. Whether it's the sting of a sharp word, the betrayal of someone we trust, or the weight of unmet expectations, hurt is an unavoidable part of the human journey. Yet the nature of hurt is not just about the pain we feel in the moment, it's also about how we understand and process that pain. At its core, hurt is an emotional response to something that we perceive as unjust or wrong. It's our reaction to the actions, words, or behaviors of others that we interpret as a violation of our boundaries, our values, or our expectations. It's often a sign that something in our internal world has been disturbed, whether it's our sense of self-worth, our trust in others, or our belief in fairness. Hurt, in its essence, is not an isolated event, but a signal, a reflection of the emotional and psychological fabric that makes us who we are. It's important to recognize that hurt by itself is not inherently harmful. Painful emotions are natural and part of being human. They help us process the complexities of life and guide us in making decisions, setting boundaries, and growing from our experiences. But the key lies in how we handle that hurt once it arises. When we fail to process or acknowledge our hurt, it can fester and become bitterness, resentment, or even anger. These emotions, if left unchecked, can distort our perception of the world and negatively affect our relationships, decisions, and personal growth. Another important aspect of hurt is that it is often subjective. What hurts one person might not even faze another. The difference lies in personal sensitivity, past experiences, and how we interpret certain situations. For example, a comment that is meant as a joke by one person may strike another person as deeply offensive or hurtful. This is why it's critical to understand that hurt is not always about the intent of the other person. It's often more about how we internalize what has been said or done. The way we interpret and react to hurt is shaped by our own beliefs, past experiences, and expectations. Sometimes hurt comes from places where we least expected. People we trust or love can unintentionally cause pain, and this can feel especially confusing. We may question, why would they hurt me, or how could they do this? This kind of hurt can be the most difficult to process because it challenges our sense of security and trust. But even in these situations, it's important to remember that hurt doesn't define the whole of the relationship. People are imperfect, and sometimes their actions or words come from their own unresolved issues, misunderstandings, or emotional struggles. The hurt they cause is not necessarily a reflection of how they feel about us, but more about where they are in their own lives. Furthermore, hurt is not always a negative experience in the long run. While it may seem paradoxical, the pain of hurt can be a transformative catalyst for personal growth. When we experience hurt, we are often given an opportunity to examine our own beliefs, values, and emotional responses. Hurt can highlight areas in our lives where we need healing, forgiveness, or change. It can teach us about our own boundaries, where we are vulnerable, and where we may need to adjust our expectations of others. In this way, hurt, though painful, can serve as an invaluable teacher, leading us toward deeper self-awareness and resilience. In essence, the nature of hurt is complex. It's not simply a feeling of pain or discomfort, but a multifaceted experience that speaks to our deeper emotional and psychological needs. It's an invitation to reflect, to grow, and to learn. When we approach hurt with understanding, patience, and a willingness to learn, it transforms from something purely destructive into an opportunity for healing and growth. Hurt doesn't have to define us, but how we respond to it can shape who we become. Emotions are powerful forces in our lives, silent yet profound drivers of our behavior, thoughts, and decisions. They are an intrinsic part of the human experience, shaping the way we interact with the world and with one another. But while emotions are deeply influential, they are not always the most reliable guides for our actions. The role of emotions is complex. They can serve as valuable signals that help us navigate life. But when we allow ourselves to be ruled by them, they can lead us astray. At their core, emotions are responses to stimuli, whether external events or internal thoughts and beliefs. They arise from our perceptions of the world around us and often reflect our needs, desires, fears, and values. For example, joy arises when we experience something that aligns with our values or desires, while sadness may come when we lose something we care about or when our expectations are unmet. Anger often surfaces when we feel wronged or when our boundaries are violated. Fear is a natural response to perceived threats or uncertainty. In each case, emotions act as indicators that something significant is happening, something that requires our attention. The challenge, however, lies in understanding that emotions are not facts, they are just signals. A person who feels anger, for instance, may believe that their anger is justified, but the emotion itself doesn't always provide an accurate assessment of the situation. Emotions often arise from personal interpretations of events, influenced by our past experiences, biases, and assumptions. So while an emotion like anger may feel all-consuming, it's important to pause and ask, what is this emotion telling me? Is this feeling justified? What, if anything, should I do with it? This is where emotional intelligence becomes essential. Emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage our emotions in ways that are constructive rather than destructive. It involves not only being aware of what we are feeling, but also understanding why we feel that way and how to respond effectively. In essence, emotional intelligence is the ability to use our emotions as tools for personal growth and effective decision-making rather than allowing them to control us. One of the most critical aspects of emotional intelligence is recognizing that while emotions are powerful, they are not necessarily permanent. Just because we feel something in a given moment doesn't mean it will last forever. Emotions are fluid, they rise, peak, and subside. The key is learning how to ride the wave of emotion without letting it carry us away. For example, in the face of anger or frustration, we can acknowledge the emotion without letting it dictate our actions. We can allow ourselves to feel angry without making impulsive decisions or saying things we might regret. The ability to sit with emotions without immediately acting on them gives us the space to choose a more measured, thoughtful response. Another critical point about emotions is their relationship to our values and goals. Emotions, when understood properly, can act as internal navigational tools that guide us toward our deeper needs and desires. For example, anxiety might indicate that we're heading into an unknown situation, something outside our comfort zone, which may actually be an opportunity for growth. On the other hand, feelings of contentment and peace often reflect alignment with our values or progress toward a goal. Emotions, in this sense, are like signposts on the road of life, pointing us in the direction of what matters most to us. However, when emotions are unchecked, they can also become obstacles. They can distort our perceptions, cloud our judgment, and lead us into unwise or reactive behavior. In moments of intense emotion, such as anger or fear, our decision-making abilities can become impaired. This is why it's so important to separate our emotions from our actions. Feeling angry, for instance, doesn't mean we need to lash out or act aggressively. Feeling anxious doesn't mean we should avoid important tasks or opportunities. In fact, when we allow our emotions to control us, we often make decisions that are driven by short-term impulses rather than long-term wisdom or clarity. A key element in managing emotions is self-awareness. Self-awareness allows us to recognize when our emotions are beginning to influence our thoughts and behaviors. It helps us to step back and assess whether our reactions are truly aligned with our best interests, or whether we are simply reacting to the immediate surge of feelings. In this way, emotional awareness doesn't just help us to manage difficult emotions, it helps us to understand ourselves more deeply. When we recognize the patterns in our emotional responses, we can begin to identify the root causes of those emotions, whether they be unresolved fears, past traumas, unmet needs, or unconscious beliefs. Another important role of emotions is their connection to empathy. Emotions are not just personal, they are relational. When we are in tune with our own emotions, we become more attuned to the emotions of others. Empathy allows us to connect on a deeper level, to understand and validate the experience of others. It helps us respond with kindness, patience, and compassion rather than judgment or criticism. When we develop emotional intelligence, we are better able to navigate our relationships in a way that builds trust and mutual understanding. The role of emotions is not to dictate our actions or decisions, but to inform them. They are valuable guides, but not the final authority. The power lies in our ability to recognize our emotions as signals, to understand them without being controlled by them, and to use them as a source of wisdom and self-awareness. Emotions are like the weather, sometimes stormy, sometimes calm, but they need not define the course of our lives. The real strength comes in learning how to respond to them with grace, wisdom, and control. And in doing so, we begin to live with greater clarity, purpose, and emotional balance. In life, we often encounter situations that provoke strong emotional responses, whether it's a hurtful comment, an unexpected challenge, or an unfair situation. In those moments, the impulse is usually to react. Reacting is instinctual. It's a quick, emotional response that comes from the immediate feelings of hurt, anger, or frustration. It feels like the natural thing to do, and it may even provide temporary relief. However, the problem with reacting is that it often leads to consequences we later regret, and it can escalate situations rather than resolve them. On the other hand, to respond means to pause, reflect, and choose a course of action that aligns with your values, goals, and overall well-being. Responding involves a conscious decision to engage with the situation thoughtfully, rather than being driven by knee-jerk emotional reactions. When we choose to respond instead of reacting, we take control of our actions and steer them in a direction that promotes understanding, resolution, and growth rather than conflict or regret. A response doesn't deny the emotion we feel, it acknowledges it. But while reacting might lead us to say something impulsive or hurtful, responding gives us the space to process our emotions and act from a place of calm, clarity, and purpose. For instance, when faced with criticism, reacting might involve defensiveness or counterattacks. But responding allows us to assess the criticism objectively, consider whether there's value in it, and choose to engage in a constructive way that moves the conversation forward. The ability to respond rather than react requires emotional intelligence and self-control. It's about being aware of our emotional triggers, understanding the deeper reasons behind our feelings, and having the discipline to pause before we speak or act. In doing so, we open the door to healthier relationships, better decision-making, and a greater sense of inner peace. While reactions are often short-term, responses can lead to long-term solutions. Choosing to respond thoughtfully transforms challenges into opportunities for growth, understanding, and maturity. Reacting impulsively, especially in emotionally charged situations, can have immediate and long-lasting consequences that we often don't realize in the heat of the moment. When we react, we are usually acting out of our emotions, anger, frustration, fear, or hurt without taking the time to pause, reflect, or consider the long-term impact of our actions. In the short term, it may feel like a release or a way to get things off our chest. But more often than not, it leads to outcomes that we later regret. One of the immediate consequences of reacting is the potential for escalation. Emotions like anger or frustration are contagious. When one person reacts defensively or aggressively, it can provoke a similar reaction from the other party, turning a minor disagreement into a full-blown conflict. Reacting without thought can easily escalate tension and push people away, damaging relationships rather than fostering understanding. What begins as a small misunderstanding can quickly grow into a bigger issue, all because emotions were allowed to govern our responses. Another consequence of reacting is that it often leads to words or actions that cannot be undone. In moments of intense emotion, we may say things we don't truly mean, things that hurt others, or even undermine our own values. Once something is said or done, it can be very difficult to take back. Even with apologies, the emotional scars left by a reactive outburst can linger and impact how others view us, sometimes permanently altering the dynamic of a relationship. In contrast, when we respond thoughtfully, we can choose our words carefully and maintain control over the direction of the conversation, preventing unnecessary hurt. Reacting can also cloud our judgment, preventing us from seeing the bigger picture. When we're caught up in emotion, we might fail to consider all the facts, alternative viewpoints, or the potential consequences of our actions. Reacting purely out of emotion often means we make decisions based on momentary impulses rather than reason or long-term thinking. In the workplace, in relationships, or in any critical situation, these kinds of impulsive decisions can lead to mistakes that are difficult to reverse. Frequent reactive behavior can damage our sense of self-control and integrity. The more we react impulsively, the more we allow external circumstances and the actions of others to dictate how we behave. This erodes our autonomy and self-discipline, leaving us vulnerable to being controlled by our emotions rather than being the masters of them. Over time, this can lead to a lack of trust both in ourselves and in our ability to navigate challenging situations with poise. One of the hidden consequences of reacting is the toll it takes on our emotional well-being. When we react, especially in ways that lead to conflict or regret, it can create a cycle of guilt, frustration, and anxiety. We might beat ourselves up for the things we said or did, or feel regret over the damage done. This emotional weight can accumulate, affecting our mental health and our overall sense of peace. By choosing to respond thoughtfully instead of reacting, we protect our emotional balance and maintain a sense of inner calm, regardless of the external situation. The consequences of reacting impulsively are rarely worth the temporary emotional release it might provide. Choosing to respond with intention and clarity, rather than reacting from emotion, leads to more positive outcomes, preserves our relationships, and ensures that our actions are aligned with our values and long-term goals. Self-awareness and reflection are powerful tools for personal growth and emotional maturity. They allow us to step back from a situation and gain a deeper understanding of our own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Without self-awareness, we can easily become reactive, driven by emotions and impulses that we don't fully understand. But when we develop the ability to reflect on our experiences and emotions, we create space for conscious decision-making and more intentional responses. Self-awareness begins with the ability to observe ourselves objectively. It's about recognizing our emotional triggers, the situations, words, or behaviors that tend to provoke a strong reaction from us. Often these triggers are linked to past experiences, unresolved wounds, or deep-seated beliefs about ourselves or the world. By becoming aware of these triggers, we can interrupt automatic reactions and begin to make more deliberate choices in how we engage with others and respond to situations. Reflection is the process of looking back on our actions, words, and emotions with a thoughtful mindset. When we reflect, we gain insight into why we felt a certain way, why we acted as we did, and what might have been a more productive or peaceful response. Reflection requires honesty with ourselves, acknowledging both our strengths and our shortcomings. It's about asking, why did I feel hurt or angry? Was my response proportionate to the situation? What could I have done differently? The combination of self-awareness and reflection empowers us to learn from our experiences. When we take time to reflect, we gain insight into our own patterns of behavior, allowing us to make adjustments and grow. Instead of repeating the same mistakes or falling into the same emotional traps, we become more intentional in our actions, learning how to manage our emotions and respond with greater wisdom. These practices also help us to better understand others. As we become more attuned to our own feelings, we develop greater empathy and patience for the feelings of others. We can recognize when someone else is reacting out of their own unresolved issues, and instead of reacting defensively, we can respond with compassion and understanding. Self-awareness and reflection are not just tools for navigating difficult situations, they are essential for personal growth. They help us uncover the deeper layers of who we are, why we behave the way we do, and how we can evolve into better, more centered versions of ourselves. With self-awareness, we stop being victims of our emotions and become the masters of our actions. In a world where we are constantly encouraged to speak up, express ourselves, and make our voices heard, there is profound strength in silence. At first glance, silence might seem like a passive or weak response, particularly in situations where we feel wrong, misunderstood, or frustrated. However, silence can be one of the most powerful tools we possess, especially when it comes to managing conflict, protecting our peace, and maintaining emotional control. The strength in silence lies in its ability to break the cycle of reaction. When we are provoked, hurt, or angered, our natural impulse is often to speak, defend, or retaliate. Yet responding immediately can escalate tension and lead to more harm than resolution. In those moments, silence gives us the opportunity to pause, collect ourselves, and decide whether speaking is truly necessary or productive. Instead of adding fuel to the fire, silence allows us to disengage from the emotional storm and regain clarity. Silence also communicates strength in a way words often cannot. When we choose not to react impulsively, we demonstrate emotional discipline and self-control. We are saying, I am in control of myself, and I won't allow the words or actions of others to determine my response. This quiet strength often commands more respect than a vocal outburst, because it reflects a calm confidence in our ability to remain composed and thoughtful under pressure. People may even begin to admire your poise, noticing that you don't easily get caught up in drama or chaos. In conflict, silence can act as a shield, protecting us from saying things we may later regret. Words once spoken can't be taken back. The sting of a harsh comment or a sharp response can linger long after the confrontation is over. In contrast, choosing silence allows us to prevent unnecessary harm to our relationships and helps preserve our integrity. Sometimes the most powerful response is simply not saying anything at all. Silence creates space for reflection. It is in moments of quiet that we gain insight into our true thoughts and feelings. When we take a step back and hold our tongue, we allow ourselves the time to process the situation, understand the root of our emotions, and evaluate the best course of action. This kind of introspection can help us approach the situation with a clearer mind and more compassionate heart, rather than reacting from a place of anger or frustration. Silence allows us to listen more deeply, not only to others, but also to ourselves. In the quiet, we become more attuned to the emotions and needs of those around us. We can hear the unspoken words, the underlying tensions, and the true feelings behind what is being said. This deeper level of listening fosters better understanding, empathy, and connection. When we listen with intention and respond with consideration, we create a space for more constructive, meaningful conversations. The strength in silence is the power to control our reactions, protect our emotional peace, and create space for wisdom and understanding. It is not the absence of words, but the presence of self-mastery. Silence is a tool for those who are secure in themselves and are willing to choose peace over conflict, understanding over judgment, and clarity over impulsiveness. It is, without question, a strength that speaks volumes without uttering a single word. Forgiveness is often viewed as a gift we extend to others, but in reality it is a profound act of self-liberation. When someone wrongs us, whether through betrayal, hurtful words, or actions that cause us pain, we may feel justified in holding on to anger, resentment, or a desire for revenge. We may even think that by withholding forgiveness, we are punishing the person who hurt us. But in truth, the only person we truly imprison through unforgiveness is ourselves. Forgiveness is not about excusing the wrong, denying our pain, or pretending that nothing happened. It's about releasing the hold that the offense has over us. When we hold on to bitterness and resentment, we allow the actions of others to control our emotional state, often for years. We allow the past to dictate our present and future, and in doing so, we rob ourselves of peace and freedom. Forgiveness then becomes the key that unlocks the chains of the past and sets us free. At its core, forgiveness is an act of letting go, not for the sake of the person who hurt us, but for our own well-being. It is about choosing to stop carrying the weight of the offense. This doesn't mean that we forget what happened, nor does it mean that we condone or tolerate harmful behavior. Instead, it means that we choose not to allow the pain to continue to define us or to hold us captive. Forgiving someone is the act of reclaiming our emotional freedom and deciding that the actions of others will not have power over our happiness. Forgiveness also allows us to heal. Holding on to anger or grudges doesn't hurt the person who wronged us, it only perpetuates our own pain. Studies have shown that unforgiveness can have negative effects on our physical and mental health, contributing to stress, anxiety, and even chronic illness. By forgiving, we release not only the emotional burden, but also the physical toll that resentment places on our bodies. It is an act of self-care, allowing us to let go of toxic emotions and create space for healing, peace, and growth. Forgiveness fosters emotional resilience. Life is filled with moments of disappointment and hurt, and our ability to forgive not just others, but also ourselves plays a crucial role in how we navigate life's challenges. The act of forgiving is empowering because it requires strength, courage, and the willingness to move beyond our pain. It teaches us that we do not need to be controlled by our circumstances or the actions of others. Instead, we can choose how to respond to life's difficulties with grace and wisdom. Perhaps most importantly, forgiveness is a pathway to freedom in relationships. When we hold on to grudges, we carry emotional walls that prevent us from experiencing authentic connection with others. Forgiveness opens the door to deeper understanding, compassion, and reconciliation. It allows us to move forward in our relationships, free from the shadows of past hurts. It creates an environment where trust can be rebuilt and where healing can take place. Forgiveness is about freeing ourselves from the burden of the past, allowing us to live more fully in the present. It is an act of love, not necessarily toward others, but toward ourselves. It allows us to release the emotional weight of old wounds, heal, and make room for new opportunities for joy, peace, and connection. Forgiveness is not just a gift we give to others, it is the ultimate gift we give to ourselves. And in that freedom, we reclaim our power to move forward, to grow, and to live with a heart that is unburdened by past pain. Personal growth through trials is one of the most transformative aspects of the human experience. We all encounter difficulties, setbacks, and challenges at some point in our lives. Whether it's facing personal loss, navigating a tough career setback, enduring a health crisis, or dealing with the complexities of relationships, life often throws us obstacles that seem insurmountable at first. However, it is precisely through these very trials that we have the potential to grow, evolve, and emerge stronger and more resilient. At the heart of personal growth through trials is the idea that adversity does not have to defeat us, it can refine us. When we face hardship, it forces us to confront our limitations, our fears, and our weaknesses. But it also challenges us to find inner strengths we may not have known we had. Like a piece of coal being subjected to intense pressure to become a diamond, our greatest growth often comes when we are pushed to our limits. Trials provide us with an opportunity to reassess who we are, what we value, and what truly matters to us. When life becomes difficult, it can feel like everything we've worked for is at risk. But in these moments, we are often forced to reevaluate our priorities and realign our goals. We learn to discern what is important and let go of things that are no longer serving us. This clarity and reorientation can be incredibly empowering as we shed the distractions and excess that we may have accumulated in easier times. Trials teach us the power of perseverance. There is a resilience that develops when we push through adversity, even when the odds seem stacked against us. We learn that challenges, while painful, are not permanent. Each setback we encounter is an opportunity to learn, adapt, and grow. Every failure becomes a lesson, a stepping stone that takes us closer to becoming the person we were meant to be. When we persevere through tough times, we build inner strength and a sense of self-confidence that can carry us through future challenges with greater ease. A significant part of personal growth through trials is the development of emotional maturity. During times of hardship, our emotional responses can be intense. We may feel anger, grief, fear, or frustration. But over time, these emotional experiences can teach us how to regulate our emotions, practice patience, and develop empathy for others who are going through their own struggles. We learn that pain is not something to be avoided, but something to be processed and understood. As we grow through our challenges, we gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and the people around us, becoming more compassionate, less judgmental, and more emotionally resilient. Adversity often sparks creativity and innovation. When we are faced with a problem or a limitation, we are forced to think outside the box and come up with new solutions. This kind of problem solving pushes us to stretch beyond our comfort zones and explore possibilities we may not have considered in easier times. It is often in the face of struggle that we discover new strengths, new ideas, and new directions that we may never have tapped into otherwise. In this way, personal growth through trials often leads to unexpected breakthroughs in our lives. Perhaps one of the most powerful aspects of personal growth through trials is the sense of gratitude and humility that it fosters. In the midst of difficulty, it's easy to focus on what we don't have or what's going wrong. But once we navigate through a tough time, we gain a deeper appreciation for the things we may have taken for granted before: our health, our relationships, our freedom, and our resilience. Trials remind us of the fragility and beauty of life, and when we come out on the other side, we are often more appreciative of the simple blessings we have. Personal growth through trials is about transformation. It is about recognizing that the challenges we face are not just obstacles to overcome, but opportunities for profound change. They help us develop patience, perseverance, and emotional depth. They teach us to let go of fear and step into our true potential. Through trials, we shed the old versions of ourselves and emerge with a stronger sense of purpose, greater wisdom, and a deeper understanding of life's greater meaning. As we continue to grow through the challenges we face, we are able to live with a greater sense of peace, gratitude, and resilience, knowing that we are always capable of overcoming whatever comes our way. Living above the hurt is not about denying or suppressing the pain we feel when others wrong us. It's about choosing to rise above it, to transcend the emotions and reactions that come from being hurt, and to maintain our peace, integrity, and sense of self in the face of adversity. Hurt is an inevitable part of life. We all experience it in one form or another. Whether it's a betrayal, a harsh word, or an injustice, the feeling of being hurt is universal. But what sets us apart is how we choose to respond to that hurt. To live above the hurt is to recognize that while we cannot control the actions of others, we can control how we allow those actions to affect us. It is about taking responsibility for our own emotional responses and not giving others the power to dictate our emotional state. When we let others' words or behaviors determine how we feel and react, we hand over control of our happiness and peace. But when we choose to live above the hurt, we reclaim that control. We acknowledge the pain, process it, but choose not to let it define us or dictate our actions. Living above the hurt begins with emotional maturity and self-awareness. When we are hurt, our immediate impulse might be to lash out, to seek revenge, or to retreat into anger or bitterness. These reactions are natural, but they often perpetuate the cycle of hurt and suffering. Instead, we can choose to pause and reflect, to ask ourselves, what is this hurt teaching me? What is the healthiest response to this situation? By taking a step back and observing our emotions, we gain the space to respond thoughtfully rather than reacting impulsively from a place of pain. A crucial element of living above the hurt is forgiveness. Forgiveness doesn't mean condoning what has been done to us or forgetting the hurt. It means releasing the emotional hold that the offense has over us. When we forgive, we stop allowing the person who hurt us to have power over our peace. We free ourselves from the chains of resentment and anger that can weigh us down. Forgiveness is an act of self-liberation. It allows us to heal and move forward, no longer bound by the wounds of the past. Living above the hurt also requires cultivating a sense of inner peace and emotional resilience. When we are centered and secure in who we are less likely to be shaken by external circumstances or the behavior of others. This doesn't mean we are immune to hurt or immune to pain, but it means we develop the strength to endure and overcome without losing our sense of peace. We learn to stay grounded even in the midst of emotional turbulence and to protect our emotional well-being by setting healthy boundaries and maintaining a positive mindset. Another key to living above the hurt is understanding that others' actions are often a reflection of their own struggles, insecurities, or limitations, rather than a true reflection of who we are. People who hurt others are often dealing with their own unresolved pain, and their actions may have little to do with us personally. Recognizing this helps us not to internalize the hurt or take it as a personal attack. Instead, we can view their actions with empathy and compassion, understanding that their behavior is more about them than it is about us. Living above the hurt involves choosing to focus on what is within our control, our own thoughts, reactions, and actions, rather than dwelling on what we cannot change. Instead of ruminating on the wrongs that have been done to us, we can redirect our energy toward personal growth, healing, and pursuing what truly matters to us. By focusing on our goals, our passions, and our purpose, we shift our attention away from the negative and toward the positive. In doing so, we maintain our power and continue to move forward, unaffected by the things that might have once held us back. Living above the hurt is about empowerment. It is about choosing not to let external circumstances or the actions of others define our emotional state. By rising above the pain, we protect our inner peace, nurture our growth, and cultivate a life of resilience, forgiveness, and purpose. It is not an easy choice, but it is a choice that leads to greater freedom, happiness, and emotional well-being. And in the process, we become not just survivors of our hurt, but stronger, wiser, and more compassionate human beings. In the end, living above the hurt is not just a matter of emotional resilience or self-discipline. It is a reflection of a deeper spiritual truth. The message of Jesus teaches us that love, forgiveness, and compassion are the highest path to healing and freedom. Jesus, who endured profound injustice, betrayal, and suffering, never allowed the hurt inflicted upon him to define his response. Instead, he modeled a life of forgiveness, saying, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do," Luke 23:34. Even in the face of betrayal by his closest friends and excruciating pain, he chose to rise above the hurt and offer grace. Jesus' message challenges us to see beyond the immediate pain, to recognize the power of forgiveness as a source of personal freedom, and to offer love even to those who harm us. It is through his example that we understand that living above the hurt is not about denying our feelings or pretending that wrongs didn't happen, but about choosing to forgive, to heal, and to love in return. As he said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God," Matthew 5:9. Living above the hurt is ultimately a path to peace, both within ourselves and in our relationships with others. By embracing the message of Jesus, we learn that forgiveness is not just for the person who wronged us, but for our own hearts. When we forgive, we release the chains of resentment and anger, and we open ourselves to the fullness of life and love that God desires for us. We no longer allow the past to control us, but instead we become free to live in the present, in grace and peace. In choosing to live above the hurt, we align ourselves with the heart of Jesus, choosing compassion over judgment, forgiveness over bitterness, and love over hatred. It is a radical act of faith that transforms not only our lives, but the world around us, creating ripples of healing and hope in a hurting world. In this way, we become reflections of His love and instruments of His peace, offering a living testimony of how living above the hurt leads to freedom, restoration, and true joy.